The anomalous Chernobyl zone is filled with many dangers: poisonous radiation, lethal anomalies, bloodthirsty mutants, and so on. Ultimately though, one of the biggest threats comes from us, humans. That is why it is important to know who is your ally and who is your enemy. And for that we have to understand factions and their relations. Hello Stalkers, and welcome to the Anomalous Dugout. In this video we will go over the power structure within the zone, as well as the relations between the various factions in the Stalker games. Before we start, please keep in mind that this is only an overview. We will not go into all the details of every faction. Moreover, I would like to remark that groups are composed of individuals who, even if they work together, may have different ideals, opinions, and personal characteristics. This means that the views and actions of a single faction member cannot be generalized to the entire faction. For example, and contrary to popular belief, not all duty members wish to destroy the zone. Not every freedomer smokes weed. Some mercenaries are more friendly than others, and so on. Even within a faction, there may appear smaller groups who do not agree on everything and who act differently towards other stalkers. Therefore, relations between factions can become very complicated, and every encounter has the chance to turn into a unique situation. That being said, let's begin by describing the general structure of power inside the zone. Generally speaking, there are three main categories of groups and factions. The first category is composed of the groups sent into the zone by official instances, that is the Ukrainian government. These are the military and the scientists. Both are authorized to penetrate in the otherwise prohibited exclusion zone. Starting with the army, this is probably the oldest and largest faction in the entire zone, although their forces are stretched thin across the entire perimeter. Indeed, the military had soldiers in the area from the very beginning, even way before the anomalous zone came to be. At the time of the games, the army has two main roles to carry out. The first is to secure the borders of the zone, ensuring that nothing enters nor leaves the forbidden area. For this, they make use of regular units positioned in outposts at the entrances of the zone, along with regular patrols around the perimeter. The second mission of the army is to investigate and uncover the secrets of the zone, as well as to secure important locations such as the X laboratories and the Chernobyl power plant. These tasks are to be carried out by more advanced units, like Spetsnaz special forces or military stalkers. Because of their nature, the army is in direct opposition to all the other factions, except for the scientists, who they are supposed to supply and protect. In practice, though, the two groups are rarely seen interacting with each other. Still, with bunker-like laboratories established directly inside the anomalous area, good equipment, and generous funding from the state, the scientists have managed to develop groundbreaking devices and technologies that first benefit the army, then the other inhabitants of the zone, and finally will surely spread around the world. Since the servicemen are not really fond of being used as field testing assistants, professors employ the services of the local folks, who belong to the second great category of factions, the Stalkers. Stalker is the name given to all the individuals who enter and stay inside the zone illegally. These trespassers have a variety of goals and motives, and are part of many different groupings, the largest of which is the Loners. Loners, or simply free stalkers, are the folks who prefer to remain as neutral as possible, sharing a strong sense of camaraderie as a mean of surviving the unforgiving wasteland. These stalkers don't really care about the politics of the zone and prefer to focus on their own personal goals. Some come to the zone to escape the outside world, evade the law or start a new life. Others are simply curious about the zone, but most risk their lives to get rich, either by searching and selling the wonderful objects of anomalous nature known as artifacts, or by completing various other tasks, such as mutant hunting, guiding other stalkers, or straight up murdering those unfortunate enough to have a bounty placed on their head. As mentioned before, some loners are also employed by the scientists to study the zone up close. And finally we have those drawn by the rumors of a wish granter located in the sarcophagus of the power plant. Because of their nature, stalkers are at constant risk of being attacked by the military, whose members have the authorization to shoot trespassers on sight. Although such conflicts did sometimes happen, the reality is much more complex, and it is obvious that corrupt officers are actually involved in the stalker trading business. These commanders have the power to smuggle equipment through their checkpoints, that they can trade for artifacts to earn much better cash than their salary. Therefore, a much bigger threat to the loners within the zone comes from their mortal enemies, the Bandits. These members of the criminal world came to the zone in search of even more profit, where the authorities cannot pursue them. The Bandits like to exploit other stalkers, taking part in activities such as arms smuggling, hostage-taking, and extortion. More often than not, this means engaging in open warfare with the loners, with both factions opening fire at each other on sight. Exceptions do exist, though, such as the case of the Skadovsk, where loners and bandits had to share the camp in times of need. It is also worth to mention that even amongst the bandits themselves, there seems to be several clans with different leaders and agendas. Thus, internal conflict between gangs is not out of the question. For those who wish to get involved into the politics of how the zone should be viewed and treated, two main choices are available, being duty and freedom. However, this is a topic not debated with words but rather with bullets, as both factions have been engaged in a mortal conflict since their inception. The duty faction was the first to emerge, having been founded by army survivors who were abandoned in the zone following a failed operation. Because of this military background, duty is well disciplined and organized like a paramilitary group. Duty's main ideology considers the zone to be a danger for humanity and the planet, like a disease that needs to be contained or, if possible, destroyed. Therefore, its members actively fight the zone and its scum by hunting down mutants and bandits in an effort to protect other stalkers and the outside world. Many dutiers also try to prevent materials from the zone to fall into the wrong hands, be it artifacts or secret documents about the experiments that took place there. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the Freedom faction is composed of free-spirited stalkers and other daredevils, who wish for the information found in the zone to be shared with the entire world. They claim that giving free access to the zone and its secrets would lead to wonderful scientific discoveries that could help improve the state of humanity as a whole. Thus, the Freedomers directly clash with the hide everything policy applied by the official authorities and sometimes duty. Both factions are mostly friendly towards free stalkers and actually make use of propaganda methods in an effort to recruit new members among the loners. They also both do not tolerate the bandits. Considering their old ties and similarities with the military, it is often said that duty and the army have special relations behind the scenes, engaging in trading of goods and information. While it is true that some members of duty have connections within the security service of Ukraine, and more specifically with the special forces, the official stance is that both groups are completely unrelated and are actually hostile to each other. As for the conflict with Freedom, it went through different phases, going from a large-scale unsustainable faction war to smaller, more sporadic skirmishes. The two factions even sometimes had to declare truces and come to agreements, like how they shared Yanov Station, for example. Now introducing the Mercenaries. This clandestine and extremely secretive group is composed of experienced and well-equipped individuals who complete various missions within the zone for their mysterious employers. The identity of those behind the Merc organization are unknown, although a client was once referred to as a large corporation. Mercenary activities include eliminating certain stalkers, retrieving artifacts, and gathering data about the zone and the secret experiments that took place within it. According to Chekhov, the mercenaries used to cooperate with all the factions in the zone before they suddenly started to attack Freedom. Since then, the relationship between mercs and other factions have been complicated. Indeed, the merc population is not homogeneous and is actually composed of many smaller groups with different missions, goals and objectives. Therefore, every single mercenary squad may have a unique approach when it comes to interacting with other factions. Some will shoot any witnesses on sight, others will at least give a warning, and some will even accept help from other stalkers. Generally speaking, the mercenaries now have a gripe with Freedom, as they wiped out several of their squads and extracted their private information using moles. Moreover, mercenaries are trying to undermine the efforts of the scientists by attacking them, stealing their research, and even getting hired as their bodyguards to make sure that the expeditions will fail. Lastly, mercs were seen collaborating with the Bandits, especially in the Wild Territory, where the two factions regularly created blockades for other stalkers. Before moving on, I must warn you, heavy spoilers ahead. Now it's time to take a look at the third and last category of factions, composed of the people who were responsible for the birth of the anomalous zone and their allies. That is, the scientists who previously worked inside the X laboratories and survived the disaster, led by the powerful entity known as the Common Consciousness. According to its representative, the group had been trying to contain the zone ever since it first appeared. Indeed, the event was caused by a mistake, and it was never their intention to create the zone. Fortified inside its base at the power plant, the Sea Consciousness adopted a very secretive and defensive position, preventing anyone from discovering their secrets or reaching the center of the zone, using psi machines such as the Brain Scorcher. They were responsible for the brainwashing and controlling of the Monolith faction, which they used as their personal army. With their minds reprogrammed, the Stalkers of the Monolith faction devote their life in service of the so-called Monolith, their godlike entity which they believe is located in a sarcophagus and that should be protected at all costs. As such, the Monolithians defend the paths leading to the zone's center, being hostile to all the other factions with the exception of zombified Stalkers. Indeed, zombies are also the products of the psi fields created by the Sea Consciousness, although suffering a much more severe brainwashing than the Monolith troops. Zombified Stalkers have lost most cognitive abilities and only keep basic survival instincts. They are generally very aggressive and will use weapons to attack anyone but the Monolith on sight. As for the warriors of the Monolith, they regularly launched raids on the barrier held by Freedom. Moreover, the largest battles to ever take place in the zone always opposed the Monolith to the military, since these are by far the two largest and most powerful factions, on top of the fact that the army tried on multiple occasions to capture the Monolith-held territory at the zone's center. Now, supposedly the bodies of the scientists connected to the common consciousness were destroyed by S.T.A.L.K.E.R at the end of Shadow of Chernobyl, leaving the Monolith faction unsupervised. We could see in Call of Pripyat that the Monolithians did not receive orders anymore, and while some of them managed to break free of the brainwashing, most continued to fight in their usual fanatical way. The factions presented so far are quite well known, because they are large and keep on existing. However, we should remember that there were also other, smaller groups that either remain largely unknown or have simply ceased to exist. Let's take a look at two of them, being Clear Sky and the Renegades. Starting with the boys in blue, the leaders of this grouping used to be part of the science team working in the exclusion zone. However, they left after the second disaster to create their own faction, Clear Sky. It is unknown if the leaders of Clear Sky kept in contact with their former colleagues, but it is a possibility we should not ignore. In any case, the group's philosophy was that the zone is something more than just a place to get rich, a cancer on the face of the earth, or even a gift to mankind, as many others claim. According to Clear Sky, the zone cannot be destroyed, and humans need to find a way to coexist with the zone, something that could only be achieved by learning about it. In an effort to understand the zone, the faction isolated itself in the remote area of the Great Swamp and started to study the zone in peace. Unfortunately for them, a gigantic emission in 2011 opened new paths to the location, and the Renegades started to pour in, instantly clashing with Clear Sky. Indeed, the Renegades were a group similar to the Bandits, composed of criminals and other scum that relied on robbing, exploiting, and killing other Stalkers to survive. The two factions fought a bloody war, with Clear Sky coming out on top. However, they would soon be disbanded, after a large chunk of the faction met their end in a push towards the power plant, which was made as an attempt to prevent the zone from provoking a third disaster. And there you have it, that's the basic rundown of all the factions and their views. If there is one thing to remember from this video, it is that the faction relations are almost never as simple as just a shoot or not shoot attitude. Most groups have different individuals and smaller squads with their own ways of thinking and their own reputation, who may react differently when meeting other Stalkers. And in the toughest of times, you might have to compromise with your enemy in order to survive. That being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, Stalkers. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.